Hey everybody, welcome. It's October 2nd. It's a Wednesday. It's a big idea Wednesday. So, we're going to get into it. Thanks for joining me right now on YouTube, Rumble, and X. Just a reminder, we're on our way to 420 subscribers on Rumble. Right now we're at 312. Oh, but we'll get there. We'll get there. You can follow along, rumble.com/coffee-nuance/live. My name's Tom Coffey, the Coffee Nuance Show. And like I say, it's October 2nd, but we got something good to get into today. I think you're going to dig it. This is something I've been thinking a lot lately. So, let's talk about dismissal branding. Good coffee. All right, so let's talk about something that's been grinding my gears. And I say grinding my gears because I guess I'm an old man, right? But anyway, that's dismissal branding. Now, you may be asking, what the hell is that? Well, it's when someone slaps a big fat label on you to shut down conversation. No debate, no questions, just dismissed. Remember when denial was something serious, like Holocaust denial? Actual monsters who look at 6 million and said, I don't think it happened. That label, maybe it made sense, but it's like the word denial went through a corporate expansion. Now they franchised it. You got climate denial, election denial. Hell, I'm sure you're one step away from social justice denial or AI denial. Questioning Alexa will soon get you canceled by Amazon Prime. Seriously. When did questioning something make you a full-blown denier? Well, have you noticed this? You raise your hand and you say, hey, maybe these climate models aren't perfect. Suddenly, you're Alex Jones. It's like we can't even critique anyone without getting labeled a lunatic. Speaking of elections, and I know this is a touchy subject, buckle up, but election denial? Look, some of the claims of the Kraken, they were out there. I get it. But are we seriously pretending elections are the only institution in America that's never corrupt? Really? Because last time I checked, we're living in a country where the DMV screwed up my license so bad, cops accused me of it being fake. True story. Yet, the moment you raise an eyebrow, you're branded with the scarlet letter of denial. They put you in the same category as people who think the moon landing was faked and Elvis is still flipping burgers in Memphis. Maybe one of those is true. But hey, here's the fun part. This isn't about having a real conversation. It's about shutting down that conversation. That's dismissal branding, folks. It's the new version of shut up, you're wrong. Except now we're giving it a fancy label so they can feel intellectual when they ignore you. We've seen this before. When people didn't like what Edward Snowden said, they called him a traitor. And they didn't like the Occupy movement. They called him lazy. And now, if you don't toe the line, you're a denier, just like that. One word, you're out of the debate. And by the way, this isn't a left or right thing, folks. Both sides do it. The right has their cancel culture crybabies. The left, well, they're concerned. Well, they've cornered the market on labeling you a denier. It's like a fast food chain of ideological censorship. You question one sacred cow, whether it's climate change, elections, vaccines, and they're like, oh, we have a denial label for that. But here's the thing. This isn't about denial. It's about control. It's about controlling what we're allowed to say, what we're allowed to question. And if you go against the narrative, boom, you're out. No room for nuance. No room for skepticism. Just accept the dogma, smile, and move on. You see it everywhere now. Climate, elections, social justice. Hell, I'm waiting for cancel culture denial to become a thing. And look, I'm not saying the flat earth crowd should get a primetime slot on CNN, but that'd be fun to watch. But if we're branding everyone who asks a question as some kind of a conspiracy nut, we're going to end up in a world where nobody asks questions anymore. And you know what happens when we stop asking questions? We get stupider. Yeah. So next time someone slaps a label on you for asking a question, just remember, it's not about what you said. It's about them not wanting to have a conversation. And that's the real denial, folks. They're denying our right to think. My name's Tom Coffey. This is the Coffee and Nuance Show. It is the least watched, censored commentary news show live right now. Flame on. I forgot my turn my flame on. Where's the remote for my flame? Here we go. Flame on. See, there we go. Oops. Here we go. Let's see. Flame on. We got the flame on. Anyway, thanks for joining today. What's up, Doug? What's up, all people on X and Rumble and YouTube? Please throw your comments in the comments, and I will go through all of them in the after show. That's where I go through all your comments, reply to them. But I want to talk about this idea. And frankly, I came up with this term, dismissal branding, because I couldn't find an adequate term for it. So, whatever. Why not, right? So, I'm calling this dismissal branding. It's a rhetorical strategy, and it's used to discredit, just shut down debate by applying this dismissive label to an individual or group that questions or critiques an accepted narrative. This term describes how a specific label, such as denial or conspiracy theorist, is applied in order to cast doubt on the credibility of the speaker, often without addressing any of the substance of their argument. Yeah. By branding someone a dismissive term, their position is effectively sidelined. Further discussion totally discouraged. So the origin of this, that at least what I think, is this is me, right? The origin, it derives from the increasing use of the emotionally charged labels in public discourse, nuanced skepticism, questioning. That's conflated with radical or totally irrational viewpoints. So the prominent example that I thought of was the term denial in the context of climate change or election process. What begins as mild critique, it just becomes categorized as just outright denial, and it leads to dismissal of the critique as irrational, dangerous. Skepticism is just totally ruled out. So the purpose of this, clearly, right, is to just marginalize dissenting opinions. And it also prevents people from actually having a conversation and talking about these things or delving into anything complex. But what it does is not only does it silence, but also it ostracizes anyone that might be socially or intellectually curious, right? This branding technique discourages any kind of engagement with ideas of the labeled party, and often this just labels them as inherently misguided or an extremist, if you will. So, for example, like the one I used in the opening, Rumble's acting weird. Oh, okay. Let me know how it goes over on YouTube then. So climate denial, right? So this is just used broadly to anyone that might question any tiny little aspect of climate science, regardless of, if they're actually questioning that climate changes. It could just be questioning like one of the models or something like that, but you just get dismissed as a denier. Election denial. This is kind of rich, I think, but it's used to silence any skepticism at all of any irregularity, right? So you can't bring up any irregularity, and you get slapped with this election denier. And in fact, it seems as though every time you discuss an election, you have to, at least on YouTube, you have to say, there's never been any credible evidence that there's been any evidence of widespread election fraud that would change the outcome of any election. That's kind of like the catch-all that you have to say when you're talking about these things. But the consequence of this is a chilling effect, kills open debate, and basically you just have this prevailing narrative that everyone has to agree with, otherwise you're out. It's a rhetorical tool, to go after anything intellectual at all. Let's just make everything conform to what the narrative is that is being presented by the permanent DC class, right? So basically, this is an ad hominem. That's a tough word to say. Ad hominem attack. It's similar to an ad hominem fallacy. That's where you just call somebody a name rather than actually go after what they're talking about. This, I'm elevating it to a different thing because it's specific. But an ad hom attack, right? Ad hom fallacy is where you just attack an individual rather than attacking the argument, right? Also, this might be related to gaslighting. That's where you just dismiss someone as being irrational, distorting their perception of reality, essentially. But dismissal branding represents a modern form of rhetorical control. That's what it's about. It's just about control. And it's just silencing dissent and promoting narrative conformity. So yesterday, and this is a little treat. You don't have to stick around for it if you don't want to, right? We're all in control of our lives. But Monday, I did a video where I talked about how AI was doing podcasts based on you could upload an article or you could upload your own research or something like that. And Notebook LM would make a podcast about that topic. Well, I wrote a paper, just a little paper on this idea of dismissal branding. And there's a little summary of it I put in the description of the video, but I wrote a paper on dismissal branding. I should publish these papers somewhere, but I don't. What am I going to do? Have a blog in 2024? Have a Substack that gets maybe 2 people reading it? Whatever. But anyway, I uploaded this paper on dismissal branding to Notebook LM, and I had it make a podcast. And so I was going to play that for you if you want to stick around and listen to it. I think it's fascinating. And it's once again another example of what AI can do, right? AI is making a podcast about this term that I came up with and wrote a little paper on. And so let me play it for you, and then we'll talk about that afterwards. And so here we go. This is the podcast on dismissal branding.
Ever get that feeling, like someone's not really trying to have a conversation, like they just want to win no matter what?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And not even by like proving their point, but by like shutting down the whole argument.
Right, with a label, yeah.
Yeah, like they slap this label on you and suddenly you're not even sure what to think anymore.
You're like, am I crazy?
Exactly. Like today, we're going deep on one of these sneaky tactics. It's called dismissal branding. And we've got this source document here. It's like eye-opening.
It really is. And what's so fascinating is this whole thing. It all starts with this word, denial. But denial, I mean, that word, it's got some baggage,
Yeah.
right? Historical baggage.
Okay, so you're talking about Holocaust denial.
Exactly. Using denier in that context, I mean, it was essential. It was about this like deliberate campaign, spreading lies, minimizing a horror show. It wasn't just disagreeing. It was like twisting history itself.
Right. So in that context, denier was accurate. It was necessary. But then the source is saying it's kind of like that word's power. It leaked out.
Yeah, it's like it became weaponized,
Yeah.
Like now it gets used to shut down any disagreement even if it's totally valid.
So it's like taking this word that describes something truly awful and then using it on anyone who like just sees things differently.
Exactly. And the source document, it actually gives some really clear examples of this, like climate denial and election
Oh
denial.
yeah, those are like powder kicks, and you can see how deny it just throws gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, for sure. Think about climate change,
Mm.
right? Hugely complex issue, tons of scientific data, but even experts, they might disagree on certain things.
But then if you even try to bring that up, boom, climate denier.
Right. Like you're suddenly no different than someone denying the Holocaust.
It's crazy. It's like, oh, so you have a different interpretation of this complex data set. You're basically a monster.
And that's what's so dangerous. It shuts down critical thinking. It paints anyone who disagrees with this huge brush.
And it sounds like the same thing is happening with like discussions about elections.
Totally. It creates this chilling effect
Mhm.
where people are afraid to even ask questions about things like, I don't know, voting security.
Because if they do, boom, election denier. Even if they're just like concerned citizens.
Exactly. And that is so dangerous because, I mean, healthy democracies, they thrive on open dialogue, right? Questioning things is how we keep things honest.
Okay, but how does this even work? Like, why is dismissal branding so darn effective? Our source, I think it like breaks down the mechanics of it,
He
right?
does. It boils it down to three main things. And the first one is what they call moral equivalence.
Moral equivalent. So it's not just that you disagree with me, it's that you're like morally wrong,
Exactly. Let's say, I don't know, you're unsure about one specific climate model, right?
which seems reasonable given how complex those models are.
Right. But with this tactic, that tiny doubt, it becomes morally equivalent to denying the Holocaust.
Whoa, it's like saying you question this one thing about climate change, you might as well deny the murder of millions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It immediately makes the other person seem, well, evil, basically.
You're not just wrong, you're irredeemable.
And that's the power of moral equivalence.
So, okay, you've got this moral thing hanging over you. Like you've done something terrible just for like having a different opinion. But our source, it says there's more, right? This dismissal branding, it's not just messing with your morals, it's like dumbing things down too.
Exactly. The source calls it simplification. It takes these super complex issues where there could be like a million different viewpoints and it just crams them into this tiny box.
Yeah.
Us versus them.
Right. Like you're either all in or you're a denier. No middle ground.
Exactly. And that, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster
Hmm.
because when you oversimplify things that much, you just kill the conversation.
Right.
No room for nuance, no room for debate.
It's like, remember those star ratings online? Back when you could only pick 1 or 5 stars? It's like that. No in between.
And what's crazy is that's not how knowledge works, right? Like
Right.
even in science, experts disagree all the time.
Yeah.
That's how we learn, by going back and forth, testing, refining ideas.
Disagreement isn't the enemy. It's like the engine of progress almost.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've got moral stuff, we've got oversimplification. Didn't they have a third thing too? What happens once you get hit with that denier label?
Well, that's where it gets really nasty. The source calls it social and intellectual ostracism.
So it's not enough to just be like, you're wrong. They have to make you feel like an outcast too.
Pretty much, you become this like intellectual pariah. People don't want to hear your ideas. They don't even want to be seen with you.
Because it's contagious, right? Like, oh no, if I talk to that denier, maybe I'll become one too.
And that's the genius of it, right? It's this silencing tactic, pure and simple. You don't even have to argue. People just shut themselves up out of fear.
Right. Like, who wants to speak up if it means becoming an outcast? So you get this like chilling effect on free speech, on just, thinking for yourself.
And that brings us to this kind of scary question the document asks. What if this tactic, this dismissal branding, it spreads?
You mean like beyond climate or elections? Like, what could be the next big denial battleground?
Well, think about all the stuff happening with AI.
Right. All the automation stuff. Yeah. Robots taking jobs and all that.
Right. And these are valid concerns, right? People are worried about their livelihoods, about the future. We need to be talking about this stuff.
But imagine if anyone who's like a little hesitant about AI, boom, they're an automation denier.
Right. And suddenly it's not okay to even question these technologies. You're just some old fashioned, scared of progress, stick in the mud.
And it's not just about technology, right? The source even mentions this term social justice denial, which is just like, yikes. Yeah, the internet is already a minefield when it comes to social justice issues.
Right. So imagine throwing denial into that mix. It's like you're saying, if you don't agree with me 100%, you're basically a bad person.
Yeah, and it's like those conversations are already tough enough without adding this whole denier thing on top of it. So where do we go from here?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do we do with this information? How do we function in a world where words are being used as weapons?
It's like we're so quick to judge, instead of actually listening, we're like, nope, you're one of them. Slap a label on it, done.
It's true. And it's
Yeah.
easy to feel like, what can you even do, right? But honestly, just knowing about it, that's a huge step. Recognizing these tactics, that's how you start to fight back.
So like shining a light on it, like we're doing right now with this dismissal branding thing, that helps us not fall for it ourselves.
Exactly. You're like, hold on, I've heard this song before. You start to see the strings,
And that goes for like everything we read online too, right? Not just taking it all at face value, but actually being like, wait, who's saying this and why?
100%. Critical thinking, that's your superpower now. Don't just look at the label, look behind it. Be okay with things being complicated,
Because otherwise we all end up in these little bubbles, right?
Yeah.
Where everyone agrees all the time. And that's like the opposite of progress.
Totally. Progress happens when you bump up against different ideas,
Yeah.
when you're forced to rethink things. That's how we grow.
So this dismissal branding thing, it's not just like some theory, right? It affects how we talk to each other, how we solve problems, everything.
It's about the future, basically. And the future, it's messy, it's complicated. We got to be able to handle that.
Man, this deep dive has really got me thinking. Like, how often have I done this without even realizing it? Used a label to shut someone down just because they made me a little uncomfortable.
We've all been there. But the important thing is we're talking about it now, right? We're aware of it, and that's huge.
It's like that saying, right? The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. The more we admit we don't have it all figured out, the better.
And the more we can actually connect with each other instead of just yelling past each other.
Okay, so to wrap this whole thing up, I guess the big takeaway here is words matter. Labels, they can be powerful, but they can also be dangerous.
It's on us to use them wisely, right? Both when we're listening and when we're speaking.
So next time you're in one of those heated debates, you feel yourself reaching for a label, just take a second. Ask yourself, am I trying to understand or am I just trying to win? And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that. Until next time, keep those conversations going, folks.
So yeah, there we go. That was the little podcast that I made with Google LM, and I just uploaded a little paper I wrote about this idea of dismissal branding, and I thought they did a really good job in the podcast. I thought they brought up some points that I hadn't thought of, and I think it's pretty incredible. Now, this Notebook LM, it's really an interesting tool. You can have it if you're trying to learn something, you can upload source material. It's interesting. I keep making this mistake. They referred to it as the source material. I should put a title on it and, by Tom Coffey or something so they could refer to me in the podcast. But I just uploaded my what I wrote. But I'll do that next time so they'll actually throw my name in there. That's kind of fun. But I think they did a nice job. I'm saying as if they're real people, right? This computer program, this algorithm, this AI was able to put together a podcast that I think did a nice job explaining this idea of dismissal branding. I think it was incredible. I think it was really incredible. And I think that is the big idea for today. So one of the things that I like to do on this Big Idea Wednesday is give you something to think about that is not just, whatever's in the news today. And you can go back to these, and I think they're fun things to talk about with other people, with your family, with your friends. If you need to talk about something that's not political, right? These kind of big ideas allow you to do that. These are topics that you can discuss and kind of learn more about them. So that was the idea in this series that I'm doing. But anyway, that's it. Stick around for the after show. I'll go through all of your comments, and I guess I'll give you my thoughts on the debate from last night, which I tried live streaming. So I'll tell you about that in the after show, and I'll go through all of your comments. I'll be back on Friday. Hope you have an excellent week. Until then, peace. Yeah, thanks for sticking around. Is that? Huh. Whatever reason. Uh-oh. I'm trying to put the comments on the screen, but for whatever reason, doesn't seem to be doing it. That's weird. That's weird. Yeah. Anyway, Doug said, this is quite odd. This is quite odd because I don't get what's happening. Interesting. Interesting. This is the same kind of thing that happened last night when I was streaming. For whatever reason, the source, it was not taking the source that I needed it to take to broadcast. So odd. So something's going on with Rumble. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll just read your comments here. Doug says, conservative podcasters are saying J.D. Vance won the debate. We agreed last night it was a tie. Any thoughts? Well, right. It depends on how you got to define these things, right? Technically, who won? Like it depends. I think it's all based on expectations, right? I think in vice presidential debates, for me, what's important is you don't hurt your own side, you don't hurt your own candidate, you don't have any big flubs, you don't have any memes that are negative for you that come out of it. So in the sense that I knew going in that J.D. Vance was really good at this, and I knew going in is that Tim Walz is a weirdo who I don't think is very good at this. I think they both exceeded my expectations, and I don't think either did enough to really hurt their side. And so I judge it as a tie just based on what I think will come of this debate. Now, if we were strictly judging it on the debate, Tim Walz got destroyed and JD Vance totally won in that way. But that's not the criteria that I was looking at. The criteria that I was looking at is how much can you help your team? How much do you hurt your team? And my initial analysis on this is that I don't think either candidate really hurt their side much. People that are fans of them, it's not going to affect their vote whatsoever, which is the job of the vice president, right? Just don't screw it up, right? Walz did a lot of things that were quite weird and odd. Style-wise, he didn't look good. He's got a big fat head, and when JD was talking, sometimes he was looking down, and the camera was showing, the top of his bald head. I don't think that that's a great look. I thought JD looked really good, and he was a lot more polished. But again, that's not how I judge debates. I judge debates on if they move the needle either way. And I don't think that it moved the needle either way. At least for me, that's my take. But maybe you got a different opinion. I think if we looked at the debate by itself and had nothing to do with the elections, clearly JD Vance won. Right. Rumble acting weird going to YouTube. Oh, I understand that. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with Rumble right now. I'm not able to get the comments on the screen, and I'm not able to do some other things in Rumble Studio. So this is what was happening last night. I did a simulcast, a watch along of the debate, and I think we got about 90 minutes in, and then it crashed, and then I wasn't able to get it to work right. But again, a lot of the times you got to do it and fail so you can figure out what you did wrong and how to fix it. In your head, everything works right. And I'm sure, right, Tim Walz last night, if he never got out there and debated anyone, and if he was not going and doing public interviews and whatnot, he didn't have the practice. So in his head, he thought he was going to do great, and he totally failed. He actually said at one time that he became friends with school shooters. I mean, obviously he misspoke, because I don't think anyone would intentionally say something like that. There was a funny meme that Trump put out immediately, which was a yard sign of Trump Vance, and it had like some grass, and it just says, "Not friends with school shooters." That was kind of funny meme from that. What's up, Lucid? Natasha asks, Lucid, if you have weathered the storm. Tom, what did the original diss mean? As in, yo, you dissing me, man. Source document should find fancy labels. Yeah, I need to actually label my what I upload to make these little AI podcasts and put me as the source, so I get some credit rather than just referring to the source material over and over again. I should make it from, Coffee and Nuance magazine or something. Coffee and Nuance Digest by Tom Coffey, right? Be one with the label. Are you a racist, homophobic, bigoted election and science denier? Yeah, it's kind of what it seems like. Natasha says those fake people have a very delightful podcast. Yeah, I think that they do a great job with it. In fact, the guy's voice reminds me of one of the guys from the Switched on Pop podcast. I think he's a musicologist, and his voice is very similar to the male voice on this. I wonder if they used him as an example, because they have a very similar voice, very similar cadence. Tim is an empty suit, says Lucid. Okay. JD did a great job getting his point across. I agree. Joe says, I enjoyed debate, totally missed the I am friends with the school shooters comment. Yeah, I missed it as well when it was live. I missed it. I saw that afterwards, and I thought, oh, that's a joke, right? And then I saw the clip, and I was like, wow. Joe says, I think JD won when you factor in general public opinions going into and out of the debate. JD was polling super low, historically low even, and Tim was polling much higher going out, I think. Could be. Like I say, often when you're judging things, it really depends on the criteria. And there's this kind of Harvard Business School model for making decisions. Or Harvard Business Review model for making decisions. And one of the things, if you're using that, it's a management tool. And if you are using that, one of the things that you lay out is you lay out what your criteria is. And we all have different criteria. So if we're making a decision about where to go to lunch, your criteria might be, is it close? That could be the number one criteria for you, right? Is the restaurant close? Or is it tasty? Or is the cost right? Those all may play into account on making the decision on where you're going to go get lunch. But with some people, their criteria might be different. For me, because I might have a little bit more time, I don't care that it's as close. I would prefer that it be tasty and a good value. Whereas somebody else that maybe they didn't have as much time, they want something close and quick, and the cost might not be as important. And so if we both made a decision on where we were going to eat, they might be different, but they were the right decision for us. And so this case, when I'm judging who won the debate, I'm judging it on overall, is it going to affect the outcome of the election? And my analysis is that J.D. Vance did a much better job than Tim Walz. However, I don't think that either of the expectations were so different between the two. I don't think that this is going to move the dial at all either way. So I would judge it a tie. based on my criteria, but what your criteria might be different, right? So that's my thoughts on that. Let's see. Joe says the needle moved among people who watched, perhaps. But again, the people that are really going to decide this election aren't watching debates, and they're probably not watching corporate media, right? I mean, if you're undecided at this point, you're not paying attention, right? And if you're undecided at this point, you're probably not watching a vice presidential debate. Kamala did a service to the election process. After seeing her, we now realize how important the VP position really is. That's very true. I did see a funny meme where the quote is, "I need a vice president dumber than me." And it was, you had Obama and then Biden, right? And then you had Biden saying, "I need a VP dumber than me." And you had Biden and Harris. And then it's, "I need a VP dumber than me." And you had Harris, and then there was a picture of Walz with a totally befuddled look on his face. It's a funny meme. Funny meme. I wish I had it. I could put it on the screen. Or do they serve margaritas? See, that is a very important thing. If you've ever gone out to eat with a group of people, or you're going to happy hour, for example, back in the day, now there's no smoking anywhere. But back in the day, that was a very important thing. You'd have one smoker in your group. And the most important thing for them is there a place that they can smoke? Can I go smoke on the patio? Is there a smoking section? Is it whatever? And nothing else mattered to the smoker, right? It didn't matter how far we had to drive. It didn't matter how much things cost. For them, is there a place I can smoke? Otherwise, they wouldn't go to the happy hour. The same thing could be true if you're maybe you're a person that doesn't like beer or wine. And it's like, do they have hard liquor? And if they don't have hard liquor, they don't want to go to that happy hour, right? So, the way we make decisions is all based on criteria. And all our criteria is probably going to be a little bit different. So there you go. That's something to think about today. I've got to figure out what's going on. I got to go online and maybe go on the Rumble Studio Reddit or something and find out what the heck is happening, because I got to figure out how to get this working right. Get your comments on the screen, all that good stuff. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. I'll be back on Friday. There was one other comment that someone put in that I glossed over. Ox said, "You're making podcasts with that AI radio voices. Try publishing it on its own channel to see how it performs on its own." Coffee Talks podcast. That's not a bad idea at all. I was thinking about doing another channel where there were no politics whatsoever, and I could just talk about like these big ideas or whatever. And I did the little experiment last week where there we go. Where I posted a walking video of that I recorded in Buenos Aires earlier this year. And it's like at 1,200 views already. So it's amazing what you can do if you're not shadow banned. It's amazing how you can do. And so I was thinking about doing another channel, coffee and ideas, coffee and psychology. I don't know, something like that. But that is an interesting idea about putting up these little podcasts. I think what would be even better is if I could take the audio podcast and then put it in and have it and see if I can get some AI avatars to, I guess, lip sync to it and talk and make it look like it's a video podcast or something. That'd be really interesting to see. So I might look into it. Maybe I can come up with that by Friday. We'll see. Anyway, you'd watch that, Joe. Nice. Yeah. If I could make these little podcasts and I think what would be even better is if I could take just this podcast, but see, now everybody's going to know these two voices. And maybe I could put it into some other AI where I could do some different voices. weren't the exact same voice that everybody knows. Like, oh, this is the podcast voice. You know, there's so many possibilities right now. What an amazing time to be alive. I think anyone that's bored, I just want to, reach through the internet and give you a smack, because what an amazing time to be alive. I'm just blown away by it. In fact, look at this little AI art here. I did that. I described. I said, give me some Soviet propaganda looking illustration of suppressing, what the heck, we'll call it dismissal branding, but essentially a censorship, and give me an angry look and whatever. And it came up with that. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. That will work well for dismissal branding. So what an amazing time to be alive. This AI is really crazy and out of control. And just this example that I showed today, that it was like an 8-minute little podcast on dismissal branding. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So if you like this, be sure to like it, share it, all that good stuff. Until Friday, peace. Good idea, Natasha. Peace. Ciao. See you all next time. What's the big idea? Nice.